Welcome back to HSC AMA. I'm your host, Julie Nuczynski, and we've got a great event in store for you today. Welcome, Norris. Aaron is the founder at AN Coaching and Consulting. He's a former Amazon executive who consults to lead sales reps on rapidly accelerating in their organizations. And he's a master of growing massive business deals, work-life balance, and strategic selling. The list goes on. Aaron, what did I miss?
I think you teed it up very nicely. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you here. We've got 25 minutes to go through like around 50 questions. So without
We'll have to go
further,
quickly then.
we gotta do it. Let's
Definitely.
go. Question one, do you have a framework for evaluating new companies that you're interested in joining, or how do you evaluate a new potential role?
So I wouldn't say I have a framework as such, but the one thing that I constantly said to myself when I joined AWS, when I joined Amazon, which is such a phenomenal company, is I wish that I'd joined 5 years earlier. And the reason behind that is AWS, the capability was it was a game changer for the market. And I think that would be one of my recommendations or criteria for any future role would be, what is that game-changing shift within the market? How can I be ahead of everybody else? Get in there early. So from a product perspective and a company perspective, who is changing the game? And then the other criteria for me would be culture first. Is this a culture that excites me, that inspires me, that I can align to in terms of my personal values? But then that also needs to have the right leader, because I believe that especially within big companies, there's cultures within cultures. So you need to be inspired to go to work every day for that particular leader. And then the third piece obviously is comp. Can I be successful? Can I build the life that I want to build with this role, with this organization? So I think it's those three things that I would, put on my checklist should I be thinking about ever going for a new role, or if I was advising an AE that is thinking about the next opportunity.
I want to jump in with a question from myself, but I promise to just be a robot later and just read the list. I just have Amazon leadership principles bookmarked in my browser, and I had this call with one of the top management of Amazon, and they recommended this. And not only that recommended, they actually mentioned that, like wherever or whoever you interact with who works at Amazon, they really follow those leadership principles, and that's what actually created Amazon's success. So I'm curious, Aaron, is it true? It's recorded. And
It is true. It is true. And this is definitely something that I can talk about in the context of Amazon. So everybody knows and everybody's heard about Amazon's leadership principles. I would say it's the thing that makes Amazon so unique. You feel it from the very first touch point that you have with Amazon. Actually, whether that be as a client or a customer of Amazon, but then the moment that you even think about joining that organization, you experience those leadership principles. So it feels strange when you join the organization. You feel like you've joined a movement, a cult. Everybody is living and breathing and talking about these leadership principles. So they're not just on the wall and pulled out when it comes to annual appraisals. These leadership principles are being used daily to make hiring decisions, to make investment decisions, to channel your thought process when engaging with a customer or thinking about the next big idea. So they are absolutely consistent across all Amazon businesses, not just AWS, Prime Video, the retail business, within the supply chain in the back end. Yes, they very much are the heartbeat of Amazon's DNA.
How do you think it's actually like, how do you think they made it happen, Aaron? Because it's really easy when you're, a startup, 10 people, 20 people, 100 people. When we're talking about the scale of Amazon, I mean, how do you scale and maintain those principles?
Well, they were born with the original leadership, with the likes of Jeff Wilkie, Andy Jassy, and I think those leaders in the S team at Amazon, they speak about those leadership principles and they act on those leadership principles every single day. And the main reason why the culture has been able to scale is through Amazon's recruitment mechanism. Anyone who's either been successful at being hired or been through the process know that the way in which Amazon hires is like no other. And we're primarily, I don't work there anymore, but still very much an Amazonian at heart. The whole recruitment process is about alignment of behaviors to the leadership principles. We are looking for people that consistently demonstrate those behaviors naturally. It's built in them. It is their way of working. You can't cheat this system. If you've been through the hiring process, you know that you'll be interviewed by multiple people, and then the whole process is mediated by someone who operates in the role as a bar raiser, who's a highly trained individual, experienced interviewer, and they have no bias towards making a decision to hire or not. They're there to ensure that we only recruit people that align to those leadership principles. So you could be the best seller with the greatest record in the history of sales, but if you don't align to core principles, especially customer obsession, then it will be a no hire decision from Amazon.
Last question for me, I promise. When it comes to sellers, because it's pretty distinctive function, and it's I won't say easy, but it's way easier to find, people who match the criteria of all of those principles in product, marketing, customer success, you name it, any other GTM function. But when it comes to sellers specifically, it's a really competitive and almost like you wanna, there's this hunting experience. You're in a way a CEO or your own kind of activity, organization, whatever you name it. So I'm curious, Aaron, what have you noticed is distinctive in Amazon sellers compared to everybody else? And how does it help or bother the success of of the results?
Are Amazon sellers different? Well, when I joined AWS nearly 6 years ago, and before I'd been through a very strict onboarding process where you are immersed in the culture, the ways of working at Amazon before you start to engage. Every salesperson comes in, we're competitive. We want to prove ourselves as sellers. Let me loose with the customers. AWS and Amazon don't allow that initially. They've streamlined it now. You get in there quicker. But when I joined, it was almost 6 months before you would take ownership of a customer engagement. And I remember very early on in my shadowing engagements with another senior AE, and the AE was talking about helping the customer reduce its bill. And I'm thinking, I can't believe that a seller that is working towards a quota, is working towards a think big ambition for this account, is actively leaning in and driving efficiencies within the services that the customer is already consuming. And that's a very unique characteristic that an Amazon seller has to have, that they have to do the right thing by the customer, in the short term, in the immediate future, because the goal is to build 10x, 20x relationships with these clients for the long term. With the cloud, yes, we put agreements in place with the customers, but ultimately, it's very easy for them to get into the cloud, but it's also very easy for them to get out. And that's what makes Amazon sellers really unique, is they all genuinely care about the success of the organization they are facing into with AWS services.
I gotta move with the list. The right thing with when it comes to the customer, what does it even mean? How do you know what's right, what's not, and how do they train you on it?
So customer obsession is the number one leadership principle. If you've got that bookmarked, you will see that right at the top, and it's at the top for a reason. But what often people can mistake that for is that means saying yes to everything that the customer asks. That isn't the case. We're expected to challenge our customers. We're expected to be thought leaders. You know, a lot of, especially enterprise organizations, haven't been down this road before, but we have, and therefore we need to shine the light on the right pathway to go. So a customer may have a view of how something should be done, but we have to be bold, brave enough, courageous enough to challenge that customer. So actually, customer obsession isn't just about nodding along and being compliant. It's about being courageous to tell the customer, okay, you're doing it that way. And yes, these are the benefits of your approach, but here's the challenges you're not aware of. Andy Jassy always talks about our job being to look around corners for our customers. And that's applicable whether you are working in Amazon, you know, or whether you're working in AWS. What problems do customers have that they don't know that they have, or they don't know that they're about to run into as they set that course? So that's very much what customer obsession is about. It's not just about saying yes, it's about guiding the customer and being willing to challenge them.
Love it. Thank you for unpacking. What are the skills you're looking to acquire in the near future?
I saw this one on the landing site. I love this question. Thank you, whoever put this question on the site. You know, in this stage of launching the business, I'm in a whole new world of standing on my own 2 feet. I don't have one of the world's largest and most innovative companies now, you know, backing me up. So I think every day I'm realizing that I need a new skill. There's lots of things that I need to learn. I would categorize it into 2 areas. Anything that helps me build new and stronger relationships with prospects and with future clients. That's something that I need to invest in. And then equally, from a fulfillment perspective, every time I work with a coachee, I learn something new. I identify an area in which I could potentially help them. So then that's an area that I need to invest in. So specific skills, that's for every day I would have a different answer. But in terms of those categories, you know, what can help me grow, what can help me deliver? Because ultimately, I want to be the best in both of those fields so that I find the right people that need my help. And then when we work together, I give them more help and more value than they could ever possibly have imagined from the engagement.
How do you approach the first meeting with a customer following handover from previous account manager?
Interesting question. I've always been lucky to have really strong handovers from my predecessors, whether that's because I've always worked in enterprise sales. You know, for over 10 years, I've always worked on big accounts. Pre-AWS at Compute Center, they only work with enterprise scale organizations. So if a previous AE hadn't done a handover in detail, there's a bit of a problem. So I've always been quite lucky. But I think that the first thing I would do before I dived into any meeting is, you know, the handover document is likely to be heavily weighted towards the perspective of the former account manager. But before you go into that meeting, there's a hell of a lot of data and anecdotes that you can gather from other people within your internal network. So I would invest time before I dive into that meeting, speaking to the broader team, you know, the delivery team that have been working with that customer, the solutions architecture, the design team, the technical team who work day in, day out with them. You know, what are their insights? What are their perspective? What did they think of the AE and how they ran the account? What's their view of, you know, the temperature within the account and the stakeholders that really make the decisions? And then equally, I would do that with, certainly in the enterprise, very few enterprise clients do it alone. You know, very few companies have engineering, delivery, operations without any outsourced partners. A lot of these big companies work with the big strategic GSIs, the systems integrators, and also boutique partners. So I would be leaning in and engaging with the partner network to really understand their view, fresh perspective of, let's just say it's AWS for argument's sake, AWS's role and position within that account. And then when I do go to have that first meeting, you've got all this information and knowledge. You have to make it all about them. To go in and push your agenda on them, I think that's probably the wrong initial move. You want to demonstrate with your approach that it's about them. What is their organization trying to achieve? But more importantly, what are they trying to achieve? What has been their frustrations working with your organization? Where do they believe there are opportunities? But equally, what is the business? What are the people from above driving them to do now and in the next 12 months? Because that perspective and that handover, the second it's written, it's out of date. The world changes so quickly. These organizations change so quickly. So I think I'd really lean in to obtain their perspective.
How do you move up quickly in Amazon? Can you share?
Can you repeat that one, sorry?
How do you move up quickly in Amazon? Can you share?
I think this is a personal view. There is no secret code within Amazon. The leadership principles are absolutely the framework to be successful. You have to be a great employee in your day job, but you have to be a great Amazonian. And I talk to a lot of my coachees when I talk about my blueprint for rapid career progression. I think that you have to master your customer, and you have to be their most strategic advisor, the person that they go to, and be just an all-around great account exec for them. But you also have to master yourself. How can you stay ahead of the game? What are those, talked about looking around corners, what are those skills that you need to acquire to be at that next level? How can you already operate at the next level? There's numerical levels within Amazon. I can't talk too much about that, but it's very clear what the expectations are to be at the next level. And there are very credible role models for you to work with. And then the third piece is that being a great company ambassador. So you talk about how do things scale across Amazon. It's always mechanisms. So tools, adoption, audit, they make sure that these things work. So you have to lean into the broader Amazon to be successful. You can't just hit your number. If you're a seller and you hit your number, that's what's expected. But you need to be contributing to the broader company. The S-team goals, the executive within your country unit. How can you build something and contribute to something that impacts the thousands, as well as impacting your number, your team? So if you tick those three boxes and you move the needle in those three areas, that's when you start to rapidly advance in any Amazon company.
I love that you mentioned the broader company goals, because normally what anybody would expect with the answer to this question would be company politics and all of the bureaucracy and the Robert Greene stuff. And I'm curious on your thoughts on this, Aaron. Would you even invest your time into like figuring out, I don't know, like call it just intelligence, or like, I don't know, political kind of maneuvering inside the company? Or because obviously just being the best in what you do is expected, as you mentioned, and hitting your number is not going to be a big surprise, especially if you're working a company like Amazon. But how do you balance between figuring out the broader company goals and just also the politics and the interpersonal connections? What do you think?
Yeah, so any negative and unnecessary politics, my simple advice, my my principle would be to stay out of any of the drama related politics. Unless there is a situation that is impacting your colleagues, or importantly your customer, then I would stay out of it. But sometimes you can't stay out of politics when there's an issue. And I would always take an empathetic approach. There's always a reason why somebody is behaving in a certain manner. So whether it's trying to help two people settle differences, or whether you are mentoring an individual that can't understand why something's happening from a political perspective, I'd ask them to walk in each other's shoes and really understand what is driving that behavior. Why are they operating in that way? What are they trying to move towards or move away from? But I think that from a advancing your career, I'd rather think about it from an EQ perspective rather than it being political. I think it's about how can you help your leaders be successful? How can you elevate them? You have to build your own brand, and you have to build your own credibility, and you have to do that in an authentic and genuine way. You can't steal the limelight from others. I think a much better way to actually raise yourself up as a leader is to help elevate others, whether that be your peers or your management, but equally your senior executives. Some of the things that I think really worked in my favor is when I brought executives into my account, and then you hear them use your customer as an anecdote, as an example, when they're stood on stage delivering an all hands to the entire company. So that that's been rewarding and empowering even for the executive. So I think that really helps. But understanding politics is, in my opinion, really important in enterprise sales, where you need to understand the politics of your customers' company as well, because you can have the best value proposition, you could really understand their business challenges and their goals, but if you don't understand how they do business and how they partner with organizations, you'll never move that idea through to an agreement, to a partnership. So I think that's absolutely critical. I like to think about it more from a cultural perspective rather than politics, but I appreciate and really understand the question.
I can't stay motivated and crush it at sales. Something's always got to give. What's the answer?
Is this to stay motivated in sales?
Yep.
I think for me, and this is very Simon Sinek, and I'm not saying anything new, but it's the why you do it. And I think that's okay to change as you progress through your career. Things change in our lives that mean our drivers change. So when I first entered sales, I used to sit sales kickoff in front of the keynote from the CEO and the MDs and the VPs and SVPs of the company. And I've always been ambitious. So my drivers and motivation came from, I want to be like that person. I am going to be that person. I'm on a one-way mission, like a train, and nobody is going to stop me. But I'll always do that in an empathetic, in a team-orientated way. But that's where I'm heading. And I was really, really clear about that, passionate about that. And that was always my driver. But then without going too personal, since becoming a father, 5-6 years ago, that changed everything. Then it's all about building the beautiful life for them. And then that changes how you approach work. But equally, I think that also helped me evolve as a leader. You can't do everything. It can't just be about put more hours in and get more rewards out the back end. You have to change the inputs to achieve even bigger outputs. So I just think having really clear goals and then having a game plan so that you do make progress towards those goals. And that's personal and professional. I do a lot of exercise and fitness outside of work. But if I don't have a goal that I'm working towards, and I need a new goal right now, whether it be a marathon or whether it be a charity endurance event, that just gives you clarity, and you have to get out of bed every morning and do the 6 a.m. workouts.
What kind of training did you receive on Amazon?
Lots of training. If only we had more time. So Amazon's very much a self-service organization. Anyone that's worked with AWS has been in the console. That is it's a great example, analogy of what it's like to work for Amazon. So there is more training than you can possibly get your hands on, and you're expected as a leader to make decisions on which training is going to be most impactful to your development, to your customers. I don't know how many releases we've done so far at reInvent, which is going on right now in Vegas, but when I left AWS, there was more than 200 services with thousands of features sat below them. You couldn't possibly know everything about all of those services and know how to sell them to your customers. So you're empowered, and you have to make the decisions on where you invest. So there's more training than you could possibly get your hands on. External trainers, internal, but it's all about making the decisions that align to your objectives, and most importantly, working backwards from the customer.
Got a lot of questions about Amazon. We have to do another AMA session here. The other question that is the most repeatable in different kind of wordings, and I'll just read it. Let's call it a day, and do another session. So the question is, how do you keep a positive attitude even when everything is going to hell? And a lot of questions like that. So it's a recession, and December.
Yeah, I think there's a session in that in itself. I like the swan analogy of cool, calm on the surface, positive attitude, and the legs going at 100 miles an hour beneath the surface of the water. But personally, as an account exec, when you're working in enterprise sales, it's always a team sport. You're always leading a team, and your team looks up to you for inspiration and direction. Therefore, it's your responsibility to be, the voice and the attitude of hope and optimism, even when it doesn't feel that way. And equally, it's your job, like a sports coach, really, to take the punches. If mistakes are made, you've got to be the resilient one to absorb that, to protect the team, to keep the team moving forwards. So it is hard, especially during tough negotiations and the latter ends of deals, or if there's an escalation from a customer, if there's been an issue of some nature. So it's not easy. You've got to dig deep, but I think just keeping focus on your team and knowing that they're relying on you, that's a motivator for me. And then also having fixed eyes on the vision. Where are you heading? Even if today is rough, we're still making small steps towards that ultimate goal.
Aaron, who are you most excited to work with on HSC?
Who am I most excited to work with? People that want to follow in the footsteps that I've laid at the likes of AWS and Compute Center. The reason for transitioning from being an AE to being a coach to the AEs of the future really is to have impact at scale. I believe that if I can build the life that I've built and done it in the way that I've done it, in balance with focus on customer, empathetic approach, but also in balance with your health and your family life, that's something that I want to give back, that I think is quite unique. There's many sellers out there that have won bigger deals than I have, I've got more experience than I have, but I see very few that are able to do it and still maintain that healthy lifestyle, still be present at home, which I know is so important. Every conversation I have with people, we start off talking about sales, but then it goes into but I want to enjoy the fruits of my labor a few years down the line. How do I ensure that I'm fit and healthy? How do I ensure that I am not damaging relationships? So that's something that I really want to give back to the HSC community.
I appreciate you, and thank you for attending our special event with Aaron Norris. And don't miss out on your chance to become the best in your transition from AE in your any sales endeavors, and your world will thank you. Your favorite quote, Aaron? Let's call it a day.
Sorry, was the question?
Oh, what's your favorite quote?
Wow, favorite quote. My favorite quote is, I'm not sure this is a famous quote, but I'm a big Manchester United fan, football fan here in the UK, who are actually playing right now. And the last time I looked at my phone, we were winning. So it's good news. It's rare news at the moment. But a leader that built one of our greatest teams as I grew up was a man called Sir Alex Ferguson. And he had a phrase about finding a way. There's always a way to win. You may need a different way. That's not the quote. The quote is find a way. And I think that's so applicable to enterprise sales. I don't believe when you get to the strategic level that you can just rinse and repeat the same steps over and over. You have to be able to pivot. You need to find new ways. You've got to look around those corners. So I think that's the one, is find a way.
Beautiful. See you on HSC AMA too. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you for hosting, Julia. Thank you everyone for the questions.
Thank you. Bye-bye.